I one thing I really liked about the director's cut here was when they talk about their rules for designing encounters. Did you get a chance to read those closely, Legion?
Yeah, and it's nothing that you would really like if you sat down as not a developer and were like, what makes a good encounter? It's nothing really um out of left field. Like it all makes sense. Like clearly uh delivering to the player where the enemies are supposed to be coming from, keeping them um like having different sight lines, so you have to fight to take space from the enemy to move forward, and just like other little things that like make a really good encounter. And from what he was saying, with how powerful we've become with our supers and exotics and all that, we've had to um or they had to really just throw out the rule book to design encounters for just how powerful we are.
Yeah. And to be fair, I kind of enjoyed the reckoning part on the bridge. That whole being assaulted from everywhere, throwing supers left and right. It's enjoyable for a bit. Even having someone dedicated to taking out those snipers isn't the worst. It's just that it's not something that they can continue to develop over and over again. I mean, they couldn't do that. They couldn't break these rules when they made Gambit Prime. They still have taking space from enemies, don't spawn them behind the player. There's tons of cover in the new Gambit Prime maps, even a little too much in the Titan map, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah,
and understanding where they're coming from, like, oh man, if they'd had to break all these rules again for Menagerie and for Crown of Sorrows, I think this season would have gone quite a bit differently.
yeah, I agree. We've kind of talked about it before. The reckoning. I think the only real issue the reckoning had was just the close timer to completing it. In my opinion, but we won't go too far into that. That's
Yeah,
not
we've been
tonight's
down that rabbit
topic.
hole.
Yep.
So we got the Armor 2.0 stream, and we'll talk about Armor 2.0 in a bit. But during the Armor 2.0 stream, they showed us a few other things, like specifically that Weapons of Light is back.
Yep.
How do you think that's going to affect everything?
uh, I think it's basically going to replace the damage buff we get from Well now, because they alluded to it being a bigger buff than what you get from Well of Radiance. And for those that didn't read the update to come, what's going to happen with the buffs and debuffs is, for the buffs, whatever you have that's the most powerful. So if you have one buff that gives 15% increased damage, and then another one active as well that gives 30%, the 30% one is the only one that's going to be applied. The other buffs will not apply. So with Weapons of Light probably being stronger than the damage buff we have with Well, I fully expect Well to be kind of used outside of a bubble. So have like bubble placed here to the side where you can back up into to grab the Weapons of Light, and then having the Well to the other side so you can just sit in it and not take, or you can recover your health while sitting in the well. So if they continue with the stand and face tank damage type of bosses, I predict it's going to be wells and bubbles, and then golden guns, I guess, for damage.
Which is fantastic because then in fights like, and of course that's sarcasm, in fights like some of these heroic Menagerie fights, I think you could survive a wall in Hasapico by standing in a bubble, couldn't you? And now bubbles are going to be mandatory for getting the same amount of damage. So I don't quite think this is going to end up fixing their issue.
Yeah, it's like I get why they did it, because they kind of want to shift the balance from warlocks to titans, because Titans are so weak in endgame PvE, but at the same time, I don't know if that was the right answer.
It'll be nice to be able to bring a Titan and not just be like, oh, I'm gonna go kill ads. Bye, guys.
Just knee everyone in the face with peregrines.
Which is fun though.
Yeah.
What do you think,
fun.
Emma? How do you see this changing like year 2 raids?
I mean, it's more of a whole of like when they start nerfing some stuff. Well, I mean, in concern with like how like the buff is going to like the weaker buff is going to clearly be destroyed by the stronger buff. It's kind of like how they were doing it with like tractor cannon and melting point and all. Like it doesn't mix. It's just one or the other per se.
And tether removes all other buffs.
Yeah.
Completely.
But I mean, as soon as like new content comes out and when they talk about like some supers being nerfed or like items here, items that, but then like they'll bring up some, other items back of what like scout rifle is going to be buffs and what, who knows, that might be the new meta. The players will always find a way to kind of like, find a way to make a meta where like even if like bubble wasn't necessarily a thing, they can make it a thing at that point. They just didn't really try because there were other supers, to be used.
Yeah, we're as players, we end up optimizing the fun out of everything. So exactly. I don't know. They kind of got to move it back to like we talk about almost every time. They got to move it back to the legit Riven fight or the Oryx fight type of thing, where we can't actually specifically damage them. But that brings up all the other issues people always complain about.
There's too much mechanics.
That's true.
There's too many mechanics. You fall down a well and you shoot some bright glowing targets. Is that too many mechanics for you?
To me, it is.
Well, yeah, it was to a lot of people. I don't. So another thing that I want to bring up before I rant, they talked about how they specifically mentioned the Lumina buff. Now, if I remember correctly, the Lumina buff is currently the same as a well, isn't it? Or at the very least, they don't stack. I thought they were both 35% right now.
They don't stack, but I think it's a little less. I'm not sure. Avatar saying Lumini is 35%, so yeah, I guess they're about the same then.
Yeah. So if if Lumina's 35%, and they're saying that Weapons of Light and Lumina will both take precedence over well, that's definitely a well nerf there. Which just means that metas are now going to have to be shifted instead of having we have 2 warlocks so we can have well at all times. Is it going to be 2 warlocks and 2 titans to make sure that we've got our bubbles and we've got our wells, especially if they're making it so that we have supers less often? I don't think that this is going to solve the issue of there's a class that needs to be taken. You can't really solve that because no matter what, as long as there's something that heals everyone or something that provides damage, we're all going to take it anyway because we're entitled gamers who want things easy. So
yeah.
And then at the very least, it'll add the skill gap level of can you back in and out of the well or of the bubble as a group without killing your teammates?
Yeah.
And that'll be it.
That is like a side thing that I really liked to hear was how the upper echelon of progression is going to be directly tied to the like end game aspirational content. So like they kind of linked back to D1 at the very beginning, where when you saw someone at like the max level, you were like, oh shit, this guy, he's a hardcore player, like he raids a bunch and all that, and he's got lucky with the drops needed to get that. So it's not going to be like as restrictive as originally in D1. So I like how like I was saying, that they're bringing back the significance of the end game content, and as long as they have good loot to chase in there, I think the end game will be a lot better this time around.
It's going to get really interesting. I think there's going to be a lot for our Sherpas and helpers to do. because I know Ambu didn't read it, and for anyone else who hasn't read it yet, he's specific with Armor 2.0. You will have enhanced perks that you can apply onto armor. Perks are going to work kind of like what's something we have that works like that right now? Ornaments, kind of. As soon as you pick it up and unlock it, you'll be able to use it on anything that it can fit into at any point. You don't need to get more of them. You don't need to take it out. It's not like, oh, I only have 2 hive armaments. I better scrap this other thing I had so I can get it back.
Yep.
But enhanced perks are only going to drop from pinnacle weapons or pinnacle activities, not pinnacle weapons. He also said that those pinnacle activities, which we still don't know what they are yet, other than Buck and I are kind of hoping that they bring back hard mode or prestige raids, because that would be awesome. Those are going to drop gear that is above what they're calling like a soft cap, like a secondary soft cap. So say that if we get up to 950 in this expansion, and that would be the soft cap, but then doing pinnacle activities would drop gear that's slightly over that. And we'll be able to use that to inch up our light level. I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. I think it's going to be pretty exciting time to be like a really active Destiny player. And then it might actually incentivize more people that aren't raiding right now to get into raiding, because that's a pretty big complaint about raiding in D2 is how unimportant it is. Like the loot, the gear, all that is just not there, so no reason to run a raid when it's so useless feeling.
Well, on the other hand, like if we were to presume a bunch of things here and take Season of Opulence, say Heroic Menagerie is the pinnacle activity, and you've got Crown of Sorrows, which is, I don't know if the regular raid will be a pinnacle activity, at least the Flawless I'd imagine would be. Like, you can run Flawless, they're going to have to like remove the loot locks or something on that, because otherwise just farm out Heroic Menagerie all day. And raiding is still not going to be that important.
Yeah, I agree.
Hold on, but you're our lead Sherpa. What do you think about the potential changes that this will bring to raiding, having a higher loot drop from raids specifically?
I mean, I can't really say. It's more of a whole, like, yeah, I mean, it'll get a lot more people into raiding and whatnot, but as opposed to like being able to the survivability, get the loot drops that's needed to make sure, you know, you survive, you do the correct damage needed and all. It'll, I mean, if they make it raid specific, then I can say that it is a crucial part, you know, of like the team and everything to like get everyone aboard to doing raids and whatnot. But
You
it's
mean like
more of
raid
like
specific mods and sort of
exactly.
stuff? That would be really interesting to see.
Because
I
yeah,
definitely hope they don't move away from like the opulent stuff they've had. I love having giving hand and shielding hand and all that. It makes
it's
your builds way better.
definitely a nice thing.
How do you
But
think
yeah,
it'll affect the do you think it'll affect the Delta at all? Like if Garden of Salvation is a light level 900 raid, it wouldn't. Do you think that they'll make it a 950 raid, and then people who do the raid have an easier time doing it later?
I mean, are we just trying to kind of
Just
like
complete
compare?
speculating.
I mean, are we trying to kind of like compare to Crown of Sorrows how they said that they intentionally made it harder for like day one raiders?
Well, that's contest. That's something
Yeah.
else.
Okay. I can't really input. I mean, this is more of like a whole like it's all speculations until we really see, you know, what actually happens.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. So, Ambu, you didn't read the giant essay we got about the game. Did you at least watch the Armored 2.0
I mean,
special?
yeah, I mean, I did, and considering of like how they have to, you know, unlock slots in or like different tiers in order to like equip like higher end like mod components, but like you're kind of like capped at like what you can actually put on. It's kind of like skill point slot system.
Yeah, very RPG feeling.
Can you give us a rundown of that, Legion? I haven't actually seen the podcast yet.
Yeah, so essentially, every armor piece is going. So think of how right now each armor piece rolls either arc, void, or solar resistance. So that pretty much is going to stay the same. Each armor piece is going to drop either as a void energy, solar energy, or arc energy, and depending on which one you get, certain perks will only be found for those energy slots. So for example, I think the void energy is the only one that can get like sniper perks, so like sniper loader, sniper targeting. So that's each like sort of the similarities that we have now. Each energy can be maxed out to a quote unquote level 10. So at level 10 will be called fully masterworked. So kind of similar to what we have now, except going from 5 levels to 10. And with each level you get an additional point that you can use. So if we use the example, so your item is masterworked at 10 points, you have like a budget of 10 points that you can use, and each different mod that you use takes a certain amount of points. So if you're using like hand cannon loader, that would be, let's say, like 3 points, and then you would still have 7 mod points that you could use to left in your budget to equip further mods onto your armor piece. So you couldn't stack all the best stuff and have more than 10 points. So that's where it kind of limits how many mods you can put on, how effective your mods could be, to kind of balance all that. And they said that they really like how this leaves them the opportunity to affect those points later on if certain things they think are too effective or not effective. They can change their point value to kind of incentivize or disincentivize players from using those mods further on.
So basically, if it turns out that everyone still slots intellect mods to get max super regen, they'll just be like, okay, fine, and bump up the points so that if you do that, you're really hindering yourself on other things.
Yeah, and sort of like using your example with the new stats. So the 3 new stats that are going to be in D2 are returning from D1. They're intellect, discipline, and strength. So intellect reduces the super, the timer to get your super back. Discipline is your grenade cooldown, and then strength is your melee cooldown. So those 3 stats are going to also drop on the armor pieces, and so you can actually max out your intellect if you get like the best intellect stats on all of your gear. So you can choose to either max out your armor with those stats, or you can slot in the intellect mods. So if you want to save your mod slots, you can get max intellect on your armor piece stats, and then you have room to use other mods instead of the intellect mod. So it's about giving you like the choices to either pursue stats or get the stats on your armor and choose other different mods.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot more complicated, and there are definitely going to be a lot more people looking for help, which will be great, especially as we get all these new people in. A few points that he so again, speaking to the responsiveness of this community here, after they showed that on Wednesday, some more questions were brought up. So he wrote a few qualifiers into his part 3. Mainly, there are going to be reloader mods and more generally useful armor mods. Those mods, which provide the exact same effect as hand cannon reloader, but also affect other small arms, cost 4 to 5 energy depending on the mod, and do not have an elemental affinity. You can put those on anything and you unlock those from the beginning. But if you want to get enhanced stuff of a certain type, that's when you're going to need to start playing the energy matching game. And then you apparently get an energy discount if you're matching it when you socket that mod. So there will be a little bit of cool building that we get to do in that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having a lot more control over creating builds and actually making builds in Destiny and kind of sharing those, so like theory crafting with people. It's definitely like something in RPG games that we don't really see. Yeah, we don't have, and a lot of people, if they've only played this type of game, have never experienced. I think it'll be something new for a lot of people and something refreshing and enjoyable for those that are familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so those mods, those enhanced things are only going to drop from the Pinnacle stuff.
Yep, so feeding the loop.
Gameplay loop.
Yep.
I mean, from what it sounds like, I kind of already have like my armor set in mind.
Yeah, they did show that they moved around a lot of slots, so it's not going to be the same. Like, my headpiece, I'm looking for this. I don't know if there's going to be any way to get 1.0 armor when 2.0 launches. So I'm definitely keeping a few pieces around just to get slot my armament mods. I'm not going to the moon infested with Hive without some Hive armament mods. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I kind of don't want to look like a spaceman. Well, actually, no, that. Wait, is that the Titan luck, or was that for the Hunter?
It's the Titan, the astronaut.
Yeah.
I wonder if the old mods will actually drop after Shadowkeep. So like if someone hasn't gotten a Hive armament this whole time, if it'll actually drop.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I would love to see those be actual mods that go on armor. You definitely have to nerf them significantly because they're just so broken. We're doing another 3-man Chronosaurus today. And having infinite heavy makes the thing a joke. I just ran around with Wendigo out the whole time, generated orbs to heal myself and get my grenade back, and then I get more heavy back. And I didn't have to worry about it at all. It'd be kind of nice if they nerf those, but bring those back in. Make things that, if I actively change my playstyle, go melee someone, I can get a shield or do a little extra damage after that for a bit. That's the sort of fun stuff I want to see in building.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like in terms of like the mods of like, the mods we have now compared to like the year 2. I mean, I know it's going to be some coding, but just speculation. Maybe like I would say have it so like, where the year 2 mods can only be accessible in like Shadowkeep, and then like the year 1 mods is more of like accessible from like where it was released, and like only accessible into those specific planets.
By accessible, do you mean like drop or usable on?
Drop.
Well, actually, I think they're just not going to exist because everything in the game is going to drop 2.0. Any legendary armor set is going to drop 2.0.
Yeah.
Anywhere, which is fantastic, and I already have my week planned out around that.
Yeah,
so
but I mean,
don't change that.
I mean, I was just saying, like, in the aspect of like if they were planning on like not completely wiping out the year 1, or not the year 1,
that system. I think they realized that system had issues, namely that everyone just slapped on super mods with maybe one armaments mod because nothing else changed your build actually. I know PvP definitely got a little more involved, but in PvE the enemies are forgiving enough that no one really worries about it.
Yeah.
But in the terms of build though, when it was said that like certain armors can give you like max intelligence per se, and that kind of enhances the cooldown of supers, was to say that like people could have like a full intelligence max stat, but then like putting on mods to like help with the other stuff.
Well, that's probably what people will do.
Well, and again, we don't know enough about this yet. If they make it so that like you have 6 stats now, if you have like 60 points, you can put that can roll on armor into those stats, because stats go up to 100, and every 10 it tiers up. If you have 60 stats, and you're looking, and everyone's just looking to get all 60 of those put into intelligence, that would actually be really good. I would actually like that, because you could get 160 intelligence, and then another one with like 4 intelligence to cap it out, and 2 something else, and then the rest you're just going to want to focus on recovery and mobility. My point being, I think we're going to see a lot of builds where people are like, I can reduce my super cooldown. Awesome. Why am I moving so slowly? People really underestimate the advantages of mobility and recovery in PvE. So,
yeah.
The PvP people won't have the problem.
I think it'll allow a lot more experimentation and uniqueness for how you want to build your stats. So like taking it back to how it was in D1, you could max out 2 stats completely, and then so there was like 5, each stat had 5 tiers, so you could max the 2 stats to 5, and then you can get the last one to tier 3. So there was like a uniqueness where, yeah, a lot of people would max out their intellect so they have faster supers, and then they would max out their discipline to have shorter grenade cooldowns. But then you could see people doing really unique niche builds where they would actually max out their strength, which is, you know, something we kind of take for granted is our melee cooldown. So looking forward to seeing how like unique people will get with those stats, because and with the stats being like mods, like it makes it even more interesting, because you could focus completely on your stats instead of going for any mods for like your weapons. So like weapon loader mods and targeting mods and all that, you can just go strictly stats if that's what we're able to do. So I think that would be pretty cool.
Oh, that will be. I hadn't considered that. Yeah. Because then you might end up, I mean, what I need: grenade launcher, loader, and scavenger. Mm-hmm. That's about it.
Yeah. But those are
going
probably going to get nerfed.
Hopefully. Yep. So actually, one of the other things he talked about off of Armor 2.0 was supers everywhere. We moved from having a 7-minute initial super cooldown and all the supers just being trash in year 1. I mean, we had a point where Titans were the highest super damage for their hammers. From Callus to Argos to Valcor, you needed Titans. You couldn't even do Prestige Eater Worlds without Titans for super damage, I think.
Yeah, I remember.
It was absolutely ridiculous. Now, it was nice because that emphasized passive builds like Devour was fantastic. I love that. And we've gotten a lot of other good passive builds during the downtime of supers recently. Hopefully those stick around or even get better in the rumored Solar Week. But they have definitely said that they want to make it harder to get supers back. I suppose not harder, but just not as common, not supers everywhere like we've currently had. Yeah. What do you guys think would be a good solution to fix this without taking us too far back to year 1?
So one thing that they said they were going to do to kind of affect that was the orbs of light that drop everywhere. So PvE, PvP, Gambit, they're less potent, so they're less strong. So you could still be making as many orbs as you are now with like your masterwork weapons killing enemies, but they're going to give less super energy. So I think that's one way to really control the amount of supers we're getting. If we're talking strictly PvP, you know, that the orb that you get from a kill with a weapon in PvP is so impactful, especially when if you're using a shotgun and you're using the perk on your helmet that gives you more super energy from shotgun. So I think one, toning down how much super energy you get from perks and items that give you energy is a really good step in the right direction. And then I don't know if they want to control the timer anymore, but maybe they do. Maybe that's what's kind of being adjusted with intellect being a stat now and super mods kind of being deprecated. But other than that, I think making supers weaker, not in terms of power, but in terms of how much damage they can just tank so they can be shut down easier in PvE and PvP is probably the single-handed most best way that they can balance these supers.
Do you agree with that, Anbu?
Actually, yeah, I would agree on that. Ooh, you get there, Legion?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with that.
I suppose it's the only way you can balance it across PvE and PvP. If you make them too useless in PvP, then they're going to be even worse in PvE, where you've either got enemies who die to anything, so you don't need a super, or you've got enemies who are way tougher than Guardians and need quite a bit of a super.
Yep.
And I mean, in concerning with the coding, I'm pretty sure like it would be trouble and all very difficult and per se to like separate the two. Where like, you know, do coding for like nerfing some supers and just PvE as opposed to the whole PvP concept.
Well, they've touched on that before. They feel that that is against their design philosophy.
Yeah.
If you have something, they want you to feel like it's valuable and the same thing no matter where you take it.
Oh, okay.
Which is respectable. I understand that. It's just a little frustrating when we see things that could be solved by,
Yeah.
splitting the two up.
Yep, I agree.
So, and then, oh man, I can't wait for Shadowkeep to come out, and the people are going to come out of the woodwork and be like, guys, my golden gun is only doing 50,000 damage now. What happened? So Luke addressed that we've been seeing 999, 999 on the screen for a while now. Actually, I think ever since we got the raid specific mods, you could hit that in a rift with a tractor cannon in a rift with striking hand and celestial on Callus. So we've been seeing 999 for a while now, and it's gotten to the point where on certain heavyweight days, you can just get it with like a single grenade shot on the knights or orcs or whatever. So they said that they're not nerfing damage, because of course that's all relative to how much health other people have. They're just going to bring it all down a bit so that we won't have to just guess at how much over damage we're doing. And they said they're actually going to make this sustainable. I don't know if that means that they're going to standardize the amount of damage across all systems, which would be really nice, or if it just means that we're going to be doing like 1 damage with a melee, like 20 damage with a super, and then like 10 damage with a heavy or something. I don't know. And then scale up from there.
Yeah.
But they'll fix it that way. Yeah. Not too much on that one.
Yeah. Good change.
Very helpful.
Instead of making it super orientated to more weapons in general as well. Combined mix mash.
Well, yeah. So they said they want to swing the pendulum back to them. I'm really curious to see how this is going to end up turning out. Because right now, the main supers that get used, you've got your ad clear stuff that you use in Gambit. And of course, in general, PvE running around the landscape, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to feel this effect too much. I mean, maybe, but like there's so many ways to get supers. Even if they reduce them by half, you'll still be getting supers within 5 minutes pretty easily. And stuff like Raids and Heroic Menagerie and Crown of Sorrows and Gambit Prime, I wonder how this is going to affect the meta. If we no longer have super high damage roaming supers, do you think that there's a chance that what can they do to make us not want to use supers more?
I don't know if they really need to disincentivize us from wanting to use them. I think it really will just come down to how well they design like environments and the content. So like specifically if we have more vertical and I guess even horizontal space. So like if we're thinking like the AEZ area that we have right now, we're not really using supers too much, especially like we're not using well because it's so big and everything's just moving around that there's just really no point for like those kind of stationary supers. So that's a really thoughtful way, I would say, to change the supers that we want to use, and instead we're using barriers, we're using our cooldowns that are a lot shorter than supers to kind of do the job of the supers that we have now. I think that's probably something that they're significantly taking into consideration with Shadowkeep and Beyond now, especially since they're in a much better place now where they don't need to feed us so much stuff to increase our quote unquote power fantasy.
Okay. Do you think this is an attempt to make the game harder overall, or just to get us to use things other than supers?
I mean, a little both, I guess. So, like, they want it to feel more challenging because it feels so much sweeter to get that victory when it's a bigger challenge. Maybe not even necessarily a bigger challenge, but more complex problem that you have to solve. So I think all that is kind of what they're thinking about right now.
Okay. They mentioned that, and they'd always recommend that people who came to review Halo play on Heroic.
Right.
Now, we still have plenty of people who can't clear the content as it is right now in the super easy mode with all the stuff we have. Do you think that's just because people aren't making use of the items that we might make use of? Or do you think that this is going to make this content too hard for them?
I think it's more of a whole like not just a loadout. I mean, there's other loadouts to kind of compensate for what you don't have, but it's more of like the person themselves, how they comprehend, like how we play versus they play, like maybe we think more differently than what they're thinking at that moment, like doing like the flawless runs, it's like, all right, move here, but then like, some people's thought process is more like, all right, I moved here and I'm fine, but it's more like each person per se, like what they're thinking and what their playstyle is, I guess.
Well, I think like this is probably the biggest barrier keeping people from doing end game activity is just how useless and like how worthless the like drops are from it. So, like, think of Chronosaur right now. If you didn't have the crazy niche ability with 1-2 punch on Arc Hunter, like there'd be nothing to chase in Chronosaur. And then think back to the other two raids that we've gotten in the past year. There's nothing really worth chasing in any of those, and people always will say like the exotics, but that kind of proves the point, right? There's nothing to chase, and like we don't even talk about the armor. Like that's completely impossible to chase for. You have no control out of the armor, so that's such a fantastic thing moving forward with not the crazy RNG that you have with all that.
Yeah. Personally, I think I like what you both said about how this is going to make people think differently. This will make people start taking into account the guidelines that Bungie uses to build an activity. Right now, if you just run in a super, or you know that you can pop your panic at any time, it doesn't matter if enemies are spawning behind you, if they're just everywhere and you don't have to actually take space from them. So many players I know don't care about what is around them. They're just gonna like run in and zerg it because they have Recluse or some Huckleberry, and everything's gonna die instantly anyway. Now they're gonna have to actually look around. Where am I? What am I doing? Why am I here? Is this a good spot to stand? No, that's a terrible spot to stand. Please don't stand in the middle of the room. Stay by the edges. Stay by the cover. Play the game as though, there's actually some risk to it, instead of just zerging it. And I am looking forward to that.
Yeah, and then it's proven that players that play this type of game enjoy that type of thing with how successful Destiny 1 was. Like, we didn't have these recluse SMGs where you get a kill and then like everything, you just put one bullet into them no matter where on the target, and they just drop. So it's gonna be, I think, such a good change. More people are gonna be getting into higher levels of activity, and they're gonna be staying, I think, more. Especially if like the loop is really rewarding feeling.
Definitely hope so.
Yeah, but I mean, oh, go ahead.
No, that's right. I just have another thing to talk. One last thing to talk about.
Sure.
I was just going to basically pick up on, it's kind of like, what our staff members and all, it's like more orientated to kind of like help, people get the loadouts, that people commonly use and all. So just.
Yeah, it'll be a great time to be in a good clan. Speaking of which, we happen to have a clan. If for some reason you don't know about it yet, but you're on this incredibly niche Twitch channel.
My outreach is crazy, dude.
I think you can find the information on Legion's channel, but we'll have this on the Apex YouTube, and I think there's a way to like steal this for our VOD or something. I don't know. We'll make sure Matt fixes it because the last thing to talk about is they're changing PvP again. They're removing the quick play and the comp playlists. They're adding. Oh, let me find it here, because this is a lot of changes, and I don't want to misspeak on this.
It is. It's definitely a lot.
Okay, here it is. So, no quick play or competitive. If you're looking for something like quick play, there's classic mix, which will have control, clash, and supremacy. I don't think I've played a supremacy game in ages.
Yeah,
so that might be
it rotates like weekly, so it's like once every other month or some shit.
Nodes? Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Comp is going to be completely replaced by 3v3 survival. Man, isn't that like what Trials used to be? Or is that Elan's?
So it's like sort of, so like the survival playlist we have now is like 2 modes. It's like the one where if you die, then you can't be if you die, it counts away from like your total team's lives, and then there's like 1 or 2 other modes. So it's separate but similar. So it's not going to be Clash or Control or any other mode. Yep. Yeah.
So it's just going to be that. And it's back to 3v3, which is another thing they mentioned. They are moving away from the 4v4s, so that's nice. Everything's going to be in a factor of 3 now. They've added 6v6 control as its own playlist. This will be the most quick play like thing, where most people can start. It's easy. It's like
it's purely connection based
zones.
Yeah, it's
purely connection based for matching.
Yep. So it's what quick play is now, which is like almost entirely connection based instead of skill based, and so they're kind of making peace with, you know what, you're gonna get some stomps, you're gonna be stomped sometimes, you're gonna have some tight games. So that's kind of like their kind of philosophy change with everything moving forward. But yeah, so Control will be 6v6. It'll be its own playlist, specifically targeting people that just want to have a good time. They're new to the game and they kind of want to check out the identity of Destiny's PvP, which Control is kind of that pinnacle Destiny only has it kind of mode for PvP.
Yeah, and hopefully they bring some nice changes. They said they're going to be putting some focus into it, giving some love. I personally have never played PvP. I generally hate it, and I have had very bad interactions with people who do main PvP that have not made me want to play it more. But who knows? With some solo queues and 3v3 survival, this could be fun, especially since I can solo queue and match up with other people who are solo queuing instead of getting stomped by a stack.
So for those that hadn't kept up with like the news for the update, so there will be a solo queue survival playlist. So if you want to play in the new comp playlist and gain glory, you can go in as a solo and only play with and against solos. And then there'll be like the regular playlist for competitive, where teams will be so solos will be separate from teams, but if you play in the team one and you go in solo, you can match with or against teams. So having the solo queue only, I think will be really nice.
Definitely.
My thought about it is that if they're kind of like taking the whole comp thing away, it's like,
yeah, it's a little weird.
I was just thinking about like what happens to like the pinnacle weapons that, you know, did require like a certain comp, you know, level, like 2100 for mountaintop.
That's specific glory.
Yeah, so the glory is gonna change. It's gonna remain, but the playlist will no longer be called competitive. It's gonna be survival. So like those, and it's, I mean, that's pretty much what competitive is now. Those specific survival modes. So it just won't have control or clash, which are pretty opinionated on how actually competitive those playlists are. So we'll see how it goes. They're always able to bring those back if the community chooses or cries enough about it and wants them back.
Yeah, and hopefully people actually listen to the PvP part now.
Yeah, so
it does sound interesting enough to hop onto.
Yeah, so I think that was the last thing we had tonight, so we should move to the couple questions that we have. So the first one we got was from Rex, asking if we're gonna play more comp now since we have the solo queue. So let's start with Face and then Anbu.
Will I play comp now that we have solo queue?
Yes, will you play more than you currently are?
Well, considering I'm not currently playing, yes, that's a yes from me. Well, actually, seriously though, one of my friends who used to do a lot of trials is coming back to play the game more regularly, and I'm not good at it, but I want to play with him and get a few other people together and, you know, try it out. I like scouts. Hopefully they buff scouts a lot, and I can use that and not be inting in comp. And if that happens, I will definitely play a lot more.
Jade Rabbit.
Jade Rabbit still slaps, dude. 3 taps, dude.
That's true. As opposed to me, I mean, I play it here and there, but I guess in the terms of like getting the daily, weekly clears done, it is an interesting concept to like get back into. But like everyone, you know, they can't really please everyone, so it's just more of like what as players feel. If we like it, we like it. If we don't, we don't.
And we'll let them know. You can count on that.
Yeah, by not playing it.
I think I'll play it probably more than I would play 6v6 Control, just because I don't like 6v6. Like, it's just way too chaotic. People play really dumb. Like, when you move to the competitive playlist after playing in the current quick play playlist, like, you just get better matches. I think people are like challenging you more and they're playing more like what a smart player would, even if people kind of disagree with that. So I think I'll play it more, get like footage and all that, just to have like a more enjoyable time than with the current or with like the new 6v6 control personally.
Sure.
Right. Matt asks, are you guys looking forward to elimination? So what are you looking forward to the most in that game mode returning? So we'll start with the same order again.
I generally dislike elimination modes. I'm the oldest of 5, and my experience with those is always someone gets eliminated, and then they sit there awkwardly waiting for everyone else to finish, and stuff like Stock Smash or things like that. I don't know. Obviously, Destiny, I've never actually played Trials of Osiris back in D1 because I only played briefly. Maybe it'll end up being really good, and I think hopefully the matches are a little shorter, so it's not just one person sitting there forever when I inevitably go down. But we'll see.
Yeah, I can't actually input because I'm not a D1 player.
Yeah, so I guess I'll explain what elimination is. It's like you have, I think it's 3 total rounds, or maybe 4 or 5 or something, but it's 3v3. So like if you die, you're dead. You sit there until someone on your team revives, and essentially whichever team loses, everyone first loses the round, and then you do whatever it is, best of 3 rounds, best of 5 rounds.
Was there like one revive, unlimited revives per se? Like one person with one revive token?
It had like different iterations. I think there was where you could revive more than once, and what they did was the revive timer would increase. So like if someone died that round, it would be in like 3 seconds that they could get revived, and then if they died again in that same round, it would increase to like 8 seconds, and then it eventually would like cap out. But the rounds are like really short. They're supposed to be like, I think 2 minutes or less, so it's and then they're kind of slow because dying is so painful to your team that people play a lot slower. They want to prioritize their life more, and then a control point will pop up, kind of like with the current competitive playlists, where like timer comes up at 0 seconds to centralize the fighting and kind of end the round quicker.
Okay. Well, I mean, given that aspect, I mean, I would say I would look forward to playing it, but wait, don't we actually have something like that in the competitive playlist?
We have Survival, which is close.
Yeah. Oh no, I guess I view mutual. I mean, it doesn't really seem any different except for like it being 3v3, I guess.
Yeah, so next question is from Avatar. Do we want to do more guides and stuff for new players when Shadowkeep drops? I'll go ahead and answer that. Yes, I'm already working on a bunch of weapon reviews for like all the current, or a lot of the most popular weapons that we currently have. So taking like the commands that we have for the roles people want and kind of going a little bit more into detail, explaining why those roles are selected, to kind of educate people a little bit more on the like what kind of perks they want to look for on that type of weapon. And then for guides, yes, especially with how deep the builds are gonna go. So how deep building and all that will be is something that'll probably be what we'll do with like guides. And then yeah, overall new player kind of content to help out all the, I imagine, hundreds of people that'll be joining for New Light.
Yep, we're working on. We got the helper role going. We got Sherpas going. We're remaking the landing page on Discord so that people who join don't get flooded with 100 channels right away. They can come in, see what we have, see where to access this sort of stuff, and help out.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're definitely looking forward to the new people.
And I mean, just putting out there, people who want to be Sherpas or you guys know people, make sure to come to me. And I guess helpers or just staff member roles in general, like admins and whatnot, make sure to talk to Face about that. I mean, we're always looking for, people to recruit because, as you guys said, we're going to have a lot more content and we're going to kind of need like the manpower to upkeep with it.
Yeah, I fully imagine we're gonna grow quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And Rex needs new friends. Needs more friends because her current friends suck.
Yeah, go from actually being nervous to maybe slightly nervous.
Yeah. I don't think we have any other questions. So, if you have a question in chat right now, type it out. But if no more questions, that wraps
Can I give
up.
a shout out to a very important person? I would just like to make sure everyone is aware of Furret. If you're not sure what it is, go Google it. It's very important. Please go look into it.
Make sure it's shiny.
Of course.
A shiny ferret. Yes, those are
Furret,
the only
not
best.
ferret.
Ferret.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Wait, did I not say ferret?
I thought you said ferret.
Oh, I guess it's my mic. No, I
All
meant ferret.
All
Thanks
right, so
everyone for
that
coming.
wraps
That's
up
it
the
for
next
today.
episode. Yep.
Yes.
See you guys.